Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in every life when we must decide who we truly are. Not who people said we are, not who circumstances tried to shape us into, but who we were designed to be. Deep down, you already know the answer. You were not created for defeat. You were born to win. Winning is not an event, it is a mindset. Look at the farmer who plants seeds year after year, even when the storms wipe out his harvest. He doesn't quit because he knows one thing: seasons change. The barren field of today can be the abundant harvest of tomorrow. That is perseverance. That is winning. Winning is the teacher who stays late after class to help a struggling student who others gave up on. It is the mother who works 2 jobs so her child can dream beyond limits. It is the young man or woman who refuses to let poverty, failure, or fear define them. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things because they chose not to give up. And let me remind you, winning does not mean you will never fall. Winners stumble, but they rise again. Winners face rejection, but they keep moving forward. Winners encounter doubt, but they choose faith over fear. What separates the defeated from the victorious is not strength, it is the refusal to stop. My friends, we are living in a world desperate for change, but change begins not with governments, not with systems, not with someone else. It begins with you, your belief, your discipline, your courage to take one more step when everything in you says, stop. So I ask you today, what will you choose? Will you surrender to the weight of excuses, or will you rise with the wings of purpose? Will you live as a victim of circumstance or as a victor of destiny? You were born to win, and the world is waiting for your victory. Stand tall, believe again, persevere again, dream again. For those who know they're born to win, this is your time, this is your moment. And when history looks back, let it say of you, they did not give up, they did not give in. They rose, they conquered, they won. Thank you. Winning is a mindset, not an event. When most people hear the word winning, they think of a moment. They think of the runner crossing the finish line. They think of the trophy being lifted high, the applause of the crowd, the medal around the neck. But let me tell you something today, winning is not a moment. Winning is not an event. Winning is a mindset. It is a way of thinking, a way of living, a way of showing up every single day. Think about it. The runner doesn't win when she crosses the line. She wins months before, when she decides to wake up at 5 a.m. to train while the world is still asleep. She wins when she chooses discipline over distraction, when she chooses practice over comfort. The race is just the evidence of the winning that already happened in her mind. The real victory doesn't happen in front of people. It happens in secret places. It happens when no one is watching, when no one is cheering, when no one is clapping for you. Winning is born in the silence of sacrifice, in the daily decision to push beyond what is easy. You see, there are people who chase moments of glory, and then there are those who carry a mindset of victory. The first group only feels like winners when life hands them applause. The second group wakes up as winners even when no one notices their effort. That is the difference. I want you to think about the farmer. The farmer doesn't look at a bare field and say, I have lost. No, he looks at the soil and says, if I keep planting, if I keep watering, if I keep believing, harvest is coming. That is a mindset of winning. He may have no crops to show for it today, but in his spirit, he has already won because he knows the principle is true. You will reap what you sow. And that is the challenge I want to put before you right now. Have you allowed life to convince you that winning is a destination, something far away, something that comes with titles, money, or recognition? Or have you embraced the truth that winning is a mindset you carry wherever you go? Winning is saying, I will rise again after failure knocks you down. Winning is refusing to let one closed door convince you that all doors are locked. Winning is the mindset that says, my today does not define my tomorrow. My setback is not my story. My struggle is not my end. History is filled with people who carried the mindset of a winner long before anyone believed in them. Thomas Edison failed thousands of times before inventing the light bulb. People laughed at him, doubted him, called him foolish. But Edison said, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. That is the language of a winner's mind. Or consider Nelson Mandela, who sat in prison for 27 years. 27 years behind bars could have convinced him that life had defeated him, that his dream was over. But Mandela carried the mindset of a winner. He believed in freedom, justice, and unity long before he ever saw them. And because his mind stayed free even when his body was locked away, he eventually led a nation out of division and into hope. That is the power of a winner's mindset. You see, the danger of believing that winning is an event is that you will live your life waiting. waiting for the perfect opportunity, waiting for someone to notice you, waiting for your big break. But those who carry the mindset of a winner understand that winning starts now. It starts with the way you think. It starts with the way you speak to yourself. It starts with the small decisions you make every day. Winning is in the student who studies late into the night because they believe education is their ladder to a better life. Winning is in the single parent who keeps going, who keeps providing, who keeps showing up, even when no one says thank you. Winning is in the entrepreneur who risks everything, fails, and tries again because they know purpose is worth the pain. Winning is not one big moment. It is thousands of small moments strung together. It is found in consistency, in discipline, in perseverance. And once you carry the mindset of a winner, even before you see the results, you can already stand with confidence because the battle is already won in your spirit. Ordinary people achieve extraordinary things. When we think of greatness, most of us imagine giants. We imagine heroes carved out of stone, larger than life figures born with special gifts. But the truth is far simpler and far more powerful. Extraordinary things are done by ordinary people. People like you, people like me, people who refuse to settle for less than what they were created to be. Think for a moment about where you are right now. Look at your own hands, your own life. It may not look like much today. You may see bills, struggles, routines, or the weight of daily responsibility. But inside of ordinary lives lies the seed of the extraordinary. Extraordinary doesn't come from perfection. It comes from persistence. It comes from courage. It comes from ordinary men and women daring to believe they can rise beyond the limits placed on them. Take, for example, Rosa Parks. She was not a politician, not a celebrity, not a wealthy leader. She was a seamstress, ordinary woman who lived an ordinary life. Yet one day she decided she would not give up her seat on a bus. That one choice, that one act of quiet courage, shook the foundations of segregation and ignited a movement. Ordinary woman, extraordinary impact. Think about the young shepherd boy named David. When others saw a giant that could not be defeated, David saw an opportunity for victory. He had no army behind him, no shining armor, just a sling and a stone. Yet with faith and courage, he brought down Goliath. Ordinary boy, extraordinary victory. And then there are stories we don't read about in history books, but they are just as powerful. The father who works 2 shifts to make sure his children have food and education. The mother who sacrifices her dreams to build a better foundation for her family. The student who studies in candlelight because electricity is a luxury, yet goes on to graduate with honors. These are ordinary lives, but their choices create extraordinary futures. So why do ordinary people do extraordinary things? Because they decide that excuses are not their story. They decide that circumstances will not cage them. They decide that even if they don't have all the resources, they will use what they have right where they are, and they will not stop. Extraordinary doesn't ask if you're ready. It doesn't wait for the perfect conditions. Extraordinary calls out to the ordinary and says, start now, start with little, start with nothing but faith. That is how greatness is born. Thomas Edison was an ordinary boy, labeled as difficult and told by teachers he would never learn. Yet he grew to hold over 1,000 patents and gave the world the gift of the light bulb. Oprah Winfrey grew up in poverty, faced abuse, rejection, and loss. Yet she rose to become one of the most influential voices on the planet. Ordinary beginnings, extraordinary impact. What separates these people is not their resources, not their background, not their privilege. It is their resolve. It is their refusal to believe that being ordinary disqualifies them from doing something extraordinary. They understood that greatness is not about what you have, but what you do with what you have. And maybe that is the message you need to hear right now. You don't need to wait for a better season to step into greatness. You don't need someone's permission to live with purpose. You don't need to be extraordinary to start. You need only the courage to begin as you are. Because here is the truth: history is not changed by those who have it all together. History is changed by those who use their ordinary gifts to create extraordinary outcomes. It is changed by the teacher who believes in the potential of one child. It is changed by the young leader who refuses to let corruption be the final word. It is changed by the worker who takes pride in their craft, knowing that excellence itself is a statement of purpose. The extraordinary is hidden in the ordinary. It is in your words, your choices, your actions, your daily steps. And when you dare to believe that your small efforts matter, they begin to multiply. They begin to ripple outwards. One act of courage, one step of faith, one decision to rise, and suddenly an ordinary life carries extraordinary influence. Winners fall, but rise again. Failure is one of the most misunderstood teachers in life. When people fall, most of them believe it is the end. They see failure as final, as proof that they were not good enough, not strong enough, not capable enough. But here's the truth: every winner you admire has fallen, and not once, but many times. The difference is winners don't stay down, winners rise again. Falling is not the mark of defeat, staying down is. Think about a child learning to walk. That child stumbles, falls, cries, and gets bruised. But you've never seen a baby fall and say, maybe walking isn't for me. No, the child gets up again and again until walking becomes second nature. If we celebrate a child's persistence in learning to walk, why do we condemn ourselves when we stumble while learning to succeed? Falling is part of the process. Rising is the proof of purpose. Look at Abraham Lincoln. Before he became president of the United States, he faced more failure than most of us can imagine. He lost multiple elections. He failed in business. He suffered personal tragedies. Any one of those defeats could have broken him, could have convinced him to stop. But he kept rising. And because he refused to stay down, he became a leader whose vision preserved a nation. Or think about Steve Jobs, fired from the very company he built, rejected by those who once believed in him. But instead of letting the fall define him, he used it as fuel. He rose again, founded new ideas, and eventually returned to Apple to revolutionize technology for generations. His fall was not his end. It was his rebirth. And let's not forget the story of the legendary basketball player Michael Jordan. He is often celebrated as the greatest of all time, yet he missed over 9,000 shots in his career. He lost nearly 300 games. 26 times he was trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. But those failures did not stop him. They defined him. He once said, "I fail over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." Winners fall, but they rise again. So why do winners rise? Because they understand that failure is not a tombstone, it is a stepping stone. They see every fall as a lesson. They don't let it break their spirit. They let it sharpen their character. Falling teaches humility, it teaches resilience, it teaches wisdom. And these are the very qualities that make victory possible. When you fall, you are faced with two choices: accept the ground as your home, or use it as the place where you push off and rise higher. Winners choose the latter. They refuse to let disappointment harden them. They refuse to let setbacks silence their dreams. They refuse to let pain convince them that destiny has forgotten them. Consider Thomas Edison again. Thousands of failed attempts at creating the light bulb. But each failure was not the end, it was information. Each fall taught him one more way not to quit. Each mistake carried him closer to success. Imagine if he had stopped after the 10th attempt, the 100th attempt, even the 1,000th. The world would still be sitting in the dark. And sometimes rising again doesn't mean you come back bigger, faster, or stronger immediately. Sometimes rising means you simply stand back up and try again, even with trembling hands. Sometimes it means choosing hope when despair feels heavier. Sometimes it means moving one step forward when all you want to do is give up. Rising again is not about how dramatic the comeback looks. It's about the courage to keep going. Life will knock you down. People will disappoint you. Dreams will be delayed. Plans will fall apart. That is the reality of living in a world where nothing is guaranteed. But what is guaranteed is the choice you make when you fall. Winners rise again. And when they rise with more wisdom, more strength, more clarity, and more determination than before. The secret of every champion is not that they never fell. It is that they never let falling be their final chapter. They rewrote their story by getting up. They understood that scars are not signs of weakness, but proof that they survived what was meant to destroy them. Falling tested them, but rising defined them. Change begins with personal responsibility. Everyone talks about change. Nations demand it, communities cry out for it, families pray for it, individuals hope for it. We all want the world to be different, better, fairer. But here is the truth that many avoid: change does not begin somewhere out there. Change begins right here with you, with me, with the choices we make every single day. Change begins with personal responsibility. It is easy to point fingers, easy to say the government must fix it, the leaders must do it. The systems must change first, but history has never been written by those who simply waited for someone else to take responsibility. Real change begins when an individual decides, if no one else will rise, I will. If no one else will lead, I will. If no one else will act, I will. Think about Mahatma Gandhi. He didn't have an army. He didn't have great wealth or political power. What he had was personal responsibility. He looked at injustice, and instead of waiting for others, he took responsibility for how he would respond. His choice of nonviolent resistance lit a fire that transformed not just India, but the moral conscience of the world. One man, one responsibility. A nation was changed. Change doesn't require a crown on your head or a title before your name. It requires ownership of your life and the courage to say, I will not live as a victim of what others decide. I will take responsibility for what I can do right where I am with what I have. That is the birthplace of change. Look at Martin Luther King Jr. He could have said, I am just one man. The system is too big. The prejudice is too deep. But instead, he stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and declared his dream. He spoke not just to demand change from others, but to call for the responsibility from every individual who heard him. His words ignited a movement because he understood that personal responsibility is contagious. When one person accepts responsibility, others are inspired to do the same. Even in everyday life, change comes down to the choices of ordinary people. A parent who decides to break a cycle of neglect by raising their children with love and patience. A student who chooses honesty in a world full of shortcuts and cheating. A worker who shows integrity in a culture where corruption is normal. These are not small acts. They are the very seeds of transformation. Personal responsibility is the soil in which change grows. The danger of waiting for others to change first is that you give away your power. You hand over the keys to your future. You begin to believe that your life is controlled by external forces beyond your influence. But the truth is, while you cannot control everything, you can always control your response. And your response is your responsibility. Change is not about complaining. Anyone can complain. It takes no strength, no courage, no vision to point out what is wrong. Change begins when someone says, yes, the problem is real. Yes, the system is broken. But I will not use that as my excuse. I will use it as my reason to act differently. History is shaped by those who embraced responsibility when others avoided it. Nelson Mandela, locked in prison, could have chosen bitterness, but he chose reconciliation. Mother Teresa, surrounded by poverty, could have chosen despair, but she chose compassion. They did not wait for conditions to be perfect. They did not wait for permission. They simply took responsibility for the influence they had, and in doing so, they became forces of change far greater than they ever imagined. And here is the reality: personal responsibility is not glamorous. It doesn't always come with applause or recognition. It is often difficult, inconvenient, and lonely. But responsibility is the price of leadership, and leadership is the birthplace of change. Do you want a better world? Take responsibility for being a better human. Do you want stronger communities? Take responsibility for serving where you are. Do you want fairness and justice? Take responsibility for living with integrity even when it costs you. Change is not out there waiting for someone else to deliver it to your doorstep. Change begins in you with what you decide today in the silence of your own choices. You were born to win from the very beginning of your existence. Before you took your first breath, before you opened your eyes to the world, you were already a winner. Do you realize that out of millions of possibilities, you were the one that made it here? Life itself chose you. That means you did not arrive on this earth by accident, by mistake, or by coincidence. You arrived carrying within you the seed of victory. You were born to win. But here's the challenge. Somewhere along the way, life begins to whisper lies into our ears. We're told we're not smart enough, not strong enough, not talented enough. We experience failure, rejection, disappointment, and suddenly we forget the truth of our beginning. We start living small, living in fear, living beneath the greatness that was placed in us from the start. Yet no matter how many lies life tells you, the truth does not change. You were born to win. Winning is not about titles, medals, or applause. Winning is about fulfilling the purpose for which you were created. It's about knowing that you are not here just to exist, but to make an impact, to create change, to leave a mark on this earth that cannot be erased. Winning is not about being better than others. It's about being the best version of yourself, the version that reflects your true design. Think about the eagle. While other birds run for cover at the sign of a storm, the eagle spreads its wings and rides the very winds that terrify others. The storm that grounds some is the same storm that elevates the eagle. That is what winners do. They don't run from challenges. They use them as fuel to rise higher. You were born with an eagle's wings, not a chicken's feathers. You were created to soar, not to scratch the ground for survival. When you look at the lives of great men and women, you begin to notice a pattern. None of them were born extraordinary. They were born like you, with nothing but potential inside of them. What made them extraordinary was that they discovered who they truly were. They embraced the truth that they were born to win, even when their circumstances screamed otherwise. Albert Einstein didn't speak until he was 4 years old and was told he would never amount to anything. But he rose to redefine physics and shape human understanding. Serena Williams grew up on cracked tennis courts, facing poverty and doubt, yet became one of the greatest athletes the world has ever seen. Winston Churchill failed classes, lost elections, and battled depression, yet led a nation through its darkest hour. Each one of them could have believed the lie of defeat, but instead they tapped into their design and lived out the truth. They were born to win. And maybe right now you feel like your life is a collection of losses. Maybe you've been knocked down by rejection, by financial struggle, by betrayal, by dreams that didn't happen the way you planned. But hear this, losing a battle does not erase your destiny to win the war. A season of struggle does not cancel your identity as a victor. Being born to win doesn't mean life will be easy. It means no matter how many obstacles you face, victory is already written into your DNA. When a seed is planted, it may look small, insignificant, even lifeless. But inside that seed is a forest waiting to happen. Inside that seed is fruit, shade, oxygen, life itself. The seed may look ordinary, but it is carrying extraordinary potential. And that is who you are. You may not look like much to others right now. You may even doubt yourself, but within you is a destiny that has been waiting to be revealed. You were born to win. This is why mediocrity can never satisfy you. It's why deep down you feel restless when you settle for less. You know there is more in you. You know you were not designed to just get by. That hunger inside of you is proof that your spirit remembers what your circumstances may have made you forget. You were born for greatness. You were born for victory. You were born to win. So now we have walked together through truth after truth. We have seen that winning is not a moment. It is a mindset. We have discovered that ordinary people, people just like you, can achieve extraordinary things. We have learned that winners are not those who never fall, but those who rise again and again. We have understood that real change does not begin out there somewhere. It begins with personal responsibility, with you taking ownership of your own destiny. And above all, we have remembered the unshakable truth: you were born to win. And what does this mean for you right now? It means that your past does not disqualify you. Your mistakes do not define you. Your failures do not cancel the greatness inside you. It means that no matter how ordinary you feel, no matter how many times you've stumbled, no matter how broken the world around you seems, your life still carries purpose, still carries destiny, still carries victory. The time for excuses has passed. The time for waiting on others has passed. Time for believing you are too small, too weak, too late. That time has passed. Now is the time to rise with a new mindset, to embrace your responsibility, to step forward with courage, and to live as the winner you were created to be. Because history does not remember those who gave up. It remembers those who chose to stand. It remembers those who carried hope when others carried fear. It remembers those who took the ordinary and turned it into the extraordinary. And you are next, so I call to you now, rise. Rise in faith, rise in courage, rise in perseverance, rise in purpose. The world is waiting for your victory. Future is waiting for your leadership. Destiny is waiting for your whys. You are not an accident. You are not a mistake. You are not here to live in defeat. You were born to win. Now go and live it.